everybody wants a more abundant life. Now, often when we think abundance, we think dollars financially, which is a big part of abundance, financial abundance. But to me, an abundant life is I want a rich life, right? I want to enjoy abundant health. I want to enjoy abundant relationships. I want to enjoy abundant financial wealth as well too, abundant lifestyle, spiritual life, you name it. Whatever somebody believes, they might call it, in science, they call it the field, the quantum field. Maybe you call it God, source, the universe, whatever it is to you. But I really believe that this intelligence behind all of life will give us what we want. However, it's not our job to figure out all the intricate details in the how. And the openness, what's so important about that is that if we're fixated on it must happen in this way, I got to take this step, this step, this step, this step, I'll be this person, so on and so on. I think that we block out a lot of the opportunities that could be there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to Flow Over Fear. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really glad you're here because we have a great guest. My guest today is Ben Spangl. He is a mindset and performance coach, an entrepreneur, host of the podcast The Pursuit, which is ranked in the top 1% of all podcasts worldwide. That is top 1%. That is a big deal. And he's created multiple online personal development programs, runs live seminars and events, and does one-on-one coaching with entrepreneurs and executives to help them build, create, and live the life that they love. And this guy not only speaks about it, he lives it. His story is incredible. He has a story of how he's overcome a lot of the overwhelm and overworking and over-living in the personal development world to actually hone it in and live a successful and fulfilling life with his family. So Ben, welcome to the show. Really glad you're here.
Adam, I'm really happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, as with every episode, I really want to start with the origin story.
Yeah.
Where you came from, because as the show's called Flow Over Fear, a lot of times it starts with fear and kind of overcoming our challenges and working through those to find this space of fulfillment. And maybe it's not always what we find. Maybe it's a journey. But I know that your journey involves a lot of plateaus and kind of rises and plateaus and all of that kind of stuff. So can you kind of share how it started for us?
Yeah, I think if I go up a little bit about growing up, was I grew up, by no means were we poor, but we were a family that just never had money. And so I always had this desire for a richer life. I mean, I wanted, and at that point, all it meant was money to me at that stage. Mom and dad always struggled with it. They were always fighting about it. And, it was just, I just thought there's got to be a better way. So I was convinced that I did not need to live that. So I went into the construction world, and because I wanted a better financial life, I would just work as many hours as I could.
Sure.
Which, when I first started that very first construction job, it was a bridge construction job, 7 days a week, 12, 13, 14 hours a day. And I was 19 at the time, but I loved it because my bank account was full,
Yeah.
And like a lot of construction, it could go in ups and downs, and a lot of life too, but that job ended. I was with my, at the time, girlfriend, and we had all this money saved, and my goal was I never wanted to be like my mom and dad, I didn't want to be broke, I didn't want to not have money. So I had this money saved, and if I would have stayed at that job, I didn't work a full year, but it would have been a 6-figure income at 19, which is cool,
Yeah.
About a month later, I'm out of freaking money. I'm like, how did that happen? So I move away to a new city, to Edmonton, where I live now. Fast forward, new construction job, not as good as what I was doing, struggling financially. And then fast forward about a year later, I get an opportunity where I got recruited into the financial industry, insurance industry specifically, life insurance investments. And man, it was, everything was speaking my language, being your own boss, control the time, unlimited income potential, the idea of recurring income that the industry provides. So again, at that point, what I was seeking was dollars. I wanted some financial freedom where I could do the things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So
Well, how did that happen, by the way? Just that switch from I'm assuming you're swinging hammers, things like that.
electrical. Yeah, I was doing
Oh, you're
electrical
doing
work.
electrical.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you went into insurance. So that's kind of an insurance and finance. So that's kind of a big switch. How did that switch happen?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, destiny, if you will, fate, if you will. But I'm on a job site. I was living with who was I with? I was living with my uncle at the time. I think was who it was, and then one of my coworkers had just started in the business on the side, very part-time. And it took him a while. I didn't know he was doing it, but about 2-3 months later, I'd moved in with him now. So I moved out of my uncle's into this guy's house, and he starts to tell me about it, that this is what he's doing. And so I was somewhat interested, not really, but as I learned more about it, I became interested. And the funny thing is that guy, and it's amazing how, the universe puts people in our path at different times. But he quit the business about 2 months later.
Oh, wow.
So had I have met him even, 4 or 5 months after when I did, we're probably not having this conversation. You know? So I always find that amazing, but that's how it happened. And it was nothing. I wasn't seeking it. I wasn't looking for it. It just, I guess it came to me and I'd never really considered it, but I like the idea of it.
Yeah. Sometimes I guess the universe just kind of puts those things in our paths, and it's up to us to either make the move or to stay where we're at. So interesting.
Right. Yeah. We do get a lot of opportunity, Yeah. It shows up in ways that we don't always think that it, as it should. Right. But I think it does show up in unique ways for sure.
Yeah. And that's an interesting segue because I want to get back to your story too, but I love that point because it shows up in interesting ways. And, if we're not open-minded, we a lot of times might miss it. So how important is it? I mean, how important is our mindset in terms of opening us up to opportunities in that case?
Yeah. One of the things I'm a big fan of is this concept, because I think almost everybody wants a more abundant life.
Sure.
Now, often when we think abundance, we think dollars financially, which is a big part of abundance, financial abundance. But to me, an abundant life is I want a rich life, right? I want to enjoy abundant health. I want to enjoy abundant relationships. I want to enjoy abundant financial wealth as well too, abundant lifestyle, spiritual life, you name it. But this concept that I love is abundance as opportunity. Mm-hmm. So earlier in my life, I was very much, I'd set my goals, my business life I'm talking. I learned about goal setting. And I was, create all these great business plans. And I'm going to do X, X, and X. And if I do X and X, I'm going to be able to get this. Very logical, very methodical, trying to map it all out. And I found limited success with it. Where I'm going with all this stuff is that I think that, and whatever somebody believes, they might call it, in science, they call it the field, the quantum field. Maybe you call it God, source, the universe, whatever it is to you. But I really believe that this intelligence behind all of life will give us what we want. However, it's not our job to figure out all the intricate details and the how. Mm-hmm. And the openness, what's so important about that is that if we're fixated on it must happen in this way, I got to take this step, this step, this step, this step, I'll meet this person, so on and so on. I think that we block out a lot of the opportunities that could be there, that there's a greater mind, a greater intelligence that could lead you where you want to go much faster, easier, and with more joy and more fun if we're open. But if we're not open, we keep trying to do it our way. I mean, that can only take you so far. You only know what you know. I only know what I know. Right.
Right. I love that because it's almost like, the luck we experience when we say, oh, it's so lucky that you experience that. Well, being open-minded gives you more opportunities for luck to happen to you in a lot of ways. So it's just like, open-minded optimism, try and put down the cynicism and cynicism seems easy it seems easy to say, well, that'll never work out. Everything's going to go to hell and all that kind of stuff because either you're right, which, gives you that reinforcement or B, you're pleasantly surprised.
Totally. Yeah.
But you miss out on opportunities because you're not open to them.
Well, and so much of the world is on that.
Yeah.
Right. So much of the world is on that, like pessimistic kind of, I mean, all you got to do is watch the news every day and I'd be pretty negative and pessimistic too. You're thinking about all the crap that's going on out there and how terrible it is and everything. And it'd be very easy to do it. However, obviously if someone's listening to this or watching this, I think that they're beyond wanting to live that kind of life. There's something they're looking for, that they can overcome the fear, they can live a life of flow, they can, have a more abundant life. So, hey, if we're going to do that, we can't follow the path of the majority.
Yeah, yeah. I love your definition of abundance as opportunity. I mean, it includes all of these things like health, relationships, family, like you're saying, and finance. But a lot of times we say, oh, abundance equals like big bank account. But we see all these people with big bank accounts, and they're just not happy because they don't have abundance in those other areas of life, and maybe they're missing out on the abundance of time. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Life success is a big part of my whole message, right? And I mean, you know this as well as I do. You probably know many people in the business world that are like this, or high-level executives, and almost all the people that I coach one-on-one, almost every single one of them, most of them are entrepreneurs. We got some high-level executives too. Probably the most common theme is that I have worked really hard to get where I am, long hours, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it worked, right? What did it do? Successful career, successful income. It worked for them. But now we're at the point where they're thinking, man, was it all worth it? Is this really how I want to spend my life? Right? So, we can have an abundance of money. And when we don't have money, often we think, I want lots of money, which is a great thing. Having lots of money is an awesome thing. It provides options. It's an awesome thing. And if it comes at the expense of that, I have no time, well, money is an infinite resource. Infinite resource. I mean, if you think just from a purely material sense, what do they do with dollars? They keep printing more of it. So just purely from an intellectual, but if we understand where money comes from, money comes from the infinite. Well, hey, guess what? It's an infinite, but time is not.
Right.
Time is not. So, how do we get that? I mean, if that's someone they say, well, I got no time. I'm maxed out right now. Sometimes we do it to ourselves, right? We wear the badge of honor of being busy. Yeah. I did for a lot of years. I spent a decade doing that. Right.
Yeah.
And it almost becomes, well, not almost, it becomes an addiction, right? That we love that. So yeah, I think it is both. I think a truly abundant life, I don't want to define it for anyone, but the truly abundant life is, how do you really want to be living? How do you really want to be spending your time? And if right now the season is, there's nothing wrong with it. If the season is, I do want to work all the time and not do it. Well, like, hey, if that's what you're wanting, I just don't think most people want that.
Yeah. That's I like that last point. So it's about intentionality, more than like at any given season. Like, you shouldn't shame yourself because I'm working too much.
No.
If it's the right season for it and if it's what you enjoy, sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. No, I think back to my early business career. I mean, I was struggling in my business. I was working a lot, but I was still having a fun time. I mean, I loved the process of it.
Yeah.
There was ups and, it's like the challenges, the setbacks, some days is it worth it? But I did at that time in my life, I loved the process. I just got to a point where I didn't love that amount of work anymore.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I could do without some of the challenges too.
Sure. Yeah. It'd be nice. Yeah, for sure.
Right. But yeah,
give it to me on a platter.
Right. Yeah. Just make it easy. Just one day of easiness would be great.
Yeah.
No. So that's, a good way to kind of bring us back into your story. So you do get into the insurance and finance world.
Yeah.
And imagine you start working a lot. You might enjoy it and you just start kind of building up that time. What did that look like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. In the beginning, lots of time, lots of hours, no results, at that point in my life. So I'm 21 then, and, really shy guy. So, I mean, in the insurance world, life insurance investments, all we do is deal with people, right?
Sure.
Like a lot of sales type positions, right? So a really shy guy. So that was not working for me. Pretty low confidence, pretty low self-esteem at that point in my life. So putting in lots of time, but I just hadn't built the identity. I hadn't built the confidence, the conviction that actually translated into results. So what it led to was I'm away from my house a lot, and I was single when I first started. So I'm away from my house a lot. I'm at the office lots. I'm doing lots of that stuff. I'm lots of flurry of activity, but it's not actually translating into, getting some success.
Yeah.
So, that led to the first year still pretty excited, second year pretty excited, but I remember getting to my lowest point was probably my second year, 2.5 years into the business. And I just tapped out. I tapped out all my credit cards. I tapped out borrowing what I could from my parents, which was pretty limited. And here I am. I'm so freaking broke that I can't even buy food. I knew I didn't have food and I had no sales coming in either. So, I'm figuring out something. So the figuring out was I called a family member, my aunt of mine, the only people in our family that had any real money. And not that they had lots, but I remember calling her, Adam, and just being in this state of disgust with myself, being in this state of total desperation, frustration, probably not full on depression, but definitely an element of it.
Sure.
And I called her and I say hi, and then I just burst into tears because it was so hard to bring myself to ask her for money because I couldn't have money for food. And so she sent me $500. My Aunt Christine sent me $500. And anyways, I got off that phone call. It was November. I think it was 2009. And I remember getting off the phone call, and I don't know if I'd ever been so angry at myself, not at the world, not anything else, but so that I had let it get to this. And that was a turning point for me. It was. And I'd love to say that turning point, man, never look back. It was a turning point in a way that the next year I worked harder. My answer was work harder, right? So I worked harder than I had worked, and it worked to a degree. I made more money the next year, was enough to survive. I was not thriving. But that was my first 3 years, that next year. And then something did kind of click about a year later, a lot more in the way that our mind works, a lot more in understanding our programming. And it was like the puzzle pieces started to come together for me, and went on to have some record years for several years after that.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'd love to unpack that a little bit because when you were at your lowest point where you weren't bringing any money, you were at the kind of the last dollars in your account, and you had to ask your aunt, what was shaping your identity at that point? Was it this idea that I need to be successful, or was it this idea that I just need to survive, or were you in complete survival mode? What did that look like? And then what was the shift that kind of made in you to, at that point, to kind of start working a little harder?
I think one of the things, and I can't tell you why this was, one of the things that did stick with me I was very fortunate to, although I was not succeeding, I was a part of an organization, still am, that had a lot of examples of success.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of people that came from different backgrounds, different ages, ethnicities, you name it, that, had overcome some great things. So struggling as much as I did, there's no doubt that I had doubts in my ability. And at the same time, I think it was bigger than hope, but I had this belief. I wouldn't say I expected it, but I did have at least a belief that one day things would work out for me. I don't know when that one day is, and I'm getting pretty freaking tired of it not being here yet. But but one day things are going to work out, and if I stick it out long enough, if I do it. So just that idea of persistence. So I mean that, even at my lowest point, I knew I wasn't turning around.
Yeah.
I knew it was ugly right there, but so that always stuck with me. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
In terms of my identity shift, I guess probably the biggest thing was I think maybe for the first time in my life, I had made maybe not the first time, but that next time, just what it's like. I know you've done these in your life, and probably everybody listening can relate, but a real life decision, a real sticking point, a real turning point. And for some, that might be the day they end the relationship, or the day they start, or what. But for me, it was the day that I say, hey, enough's enough, man. Like, I'm not going to I was gone from my house a lot, but was I really putting in the effort that I could have been? No way. Right.
Yeah.
So that was probably at that point, that's what it was I was not going to let, my lack of willingness to overcome my fears. And primarily, and obviously in like sales business, what are you afraid of? You're afraid of rejection.
Sure.
Right. You're afraid of putting yourself out there. Right.
Right.
And I think the decision that just F it, I'm going to go for it. I'll go bankrupt or I'll do it.
Right. And so how did you cope with that fear of rejection? Because I know that's deep in a lot of people. I mean, that's a big fear.
Yeah.
And was it just like a sheer willpower of like, I'm just going to be bigger than my fears and just go for it? Or was it like, were there some level of tools that you worked through to kind of disconnect yourself from that rejection?
I think the one advantage that in the years of struggle preceding this, the one advantage was I had already gone through a lot of rejection. Now that had not translated into, success yet, but what it did help was there's no doubt that it helped desensitize. Right.
Right.
There's a guy, I'm not sure if you've heard of him, Steve Siebold. Steve? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So he teaches this concept of systematic desensitization.
Yeah.
And, he uses it with salespeople, what he talks about, but in the military, they use it where, and I might be slightly off on the analogy, but I'm pretty sure it's where when they're training snipers and they'll actually flood them with like videos and contents of these are the bad guys and, killing people. Cause you got to imagine to take a human to kill another human is a pretty serious thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
that concept in business different, but how do we become desensitized to it? I mean, you end up doing lots of it. So part of it, to answer your question, is that I think that really in overcoming, I think any fear really, I mean, what's the greatest way to do so is you got to step into it.
Yeah.
And the more we step into it, the more we realize, wow, that was okay. I mean, it stung a little. Yeah. But still got both my arms, I'm okay. Right.
Still here. Yeah.
Still here. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. And then beyond that, I'm big on vision. At that point in my life, I kind of had some goals, but not real clear vision. But I'm huge on vision because when you have a vision that really matters to you, it could be a goal, sure, but I think goals are temporary, right? I mean, they're kind of usually more shorter term things that we want. But then there's a vision for your life. How do you really want to be living? And to me, that was something that would pull me through. And then I think the last thing I'll say, Adam, is just I'd be 100% lying through my teeth if I said it was perfect. I mean, I caved into the fear lots still.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
I did more than I'd ever done. And I worked to overcome it, but guaranteed there was many times that the fear won. Right. Yeah. You don't have to win every time. You just got to win enough times.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And I hope that everybody listens to that because that's such an important point and something that I have experienced too, is that the fear never goes away. I mean, you can continue to work with it. And there are times, I have a theory that there's three ways you can have a relationship with fear. You could be fighting it, facing it, or embracing it. And, when you're fighting it, you're almost always losing because you're fighting against an emotion that's there for a reason, but you can rise above it. And, sometimes even now it's like, even though I preach that message, I'm still fighting against it and pushing against it even today with lots of stuff. It's just, it's never perfect. And I really appreciate you saying that. Yeah. And so your mindset shifted to just kind of to obviously you built that relationship with rejection, so to speak, so that you desensitized to it. How else did your mindset shift from the point where after you started to build enough to live on or find that to then rise to your next level of achievement? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So a lot of that was, I know what happened. So I went to my very first seminar and I keep the book on my shelf. You might not be able to see it in this video, but it's right behind me. Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. I read the book and I don't know if they still do the seminars, but at that time they did. And it had been recommended to me by a friend's parents actually. And anyways, I ended up in that seminar and it was a 3-day seminar. A lot of things changed. I met my wife at that seminar. So of course, our life changed dramatically from that. What happened for me though, is I had already been at that point, Adam, I would have called myself like a personal development junkie, Yeah. So I was just reading, not really doing a lot with it, but I'm reading. And, listening to CDs back then in my car and doing that kind of stuff, probably watching some YouTubes, maybe bought a couple online programs. But when I went to the seminar, it was so experiential through various exercises. And, it's just different, right? It's totally different to be able to do that in person than anything else. And it was like a little, what I had been studying kind of clicked, but a new awareness had opened up on understanding why and how I was producing the results I was producing. I had, up to that point, I thought I knew a little bit about it, but I really didn't understand the power of programming and how this translates into our results. So we've all been programmed for various different things. The mind, the brain is kind of like that. It's like the supercomputer, right? And, in the term GIGO, if we've got garbage in, we're going to have garbage out in computing. Well, it's the same thing in our life. So if we're continually producing less than desirable results in any area, for me, it was money, finance, right?
Right.
Continually producing it. I promise you, there's nothing wrong with you. There is an issue with the software though. There is an issue with the program. And you've got some unworkable beliefs in there that continue to produce certain behaviors that do it, that continue to keep you on a certain frequency, which determines what you're attracting in your life. And so I learned the power of this stuff. And most importantly was, how do you begin to rewrite it? How do I begin to change that on a deeper level, on an unconscious level, right? 95% of our personality is in the subconscious mind. Who we are, the way we think, what we do, what we feel. Of course, it runs our body, but it runs all this other stuff in our life too. So 5% only is a part of our conscious mind. Well, guess what? Consciously, we could probably interview anyone. Do you want to be healthier? Yes. Do you know some things you could be doing to be healthier? I do. Are you doing them? No, not as much as I'd like to.
Right.
Do you know how to make more money? Would you like? Yeah, I do. I got some ideas. They probably even know what they could be doing. Right? So why don't we do more of what we know? Well, this is where what we want consciously hasn't moved from a conscious concept idea into the subconscious. And when there's a mismatch, the emotional mind or the subconscious mind's always going to win.
Mm-hmm. So the conscious mind has the idea, but the subconscious mind has the anchor.
Yes.
Is that right?
A great analogy. 100%. Yeah, it's a great way to put it for sure. You know, I mean, why, again, everybody wants change, but changing is truly difficult. Why? Because we're fighting. Not fighting, but we're going up against a program that runs the majority of our life. So as long as I'm exercising willpower, you know, if you say, well, I'm no longer going to eat this way, I'm cutting out sugar. Well, as long as you exercise the willpower, yeah, that's fine. But what happens when you're not paying attention? Before we know it, we've drifted back. We're eating the cake. We're having the ice cream. We're doing the whatever, right? Or I'm going to grow my business. I'm going to do X amount of sales calls, X amount of this, X amount. And week 1, good. Week 2, good. Well, I missed a day week 2, but it's okay. I'm going to be all right. Week 3, et cetera, et cetera. When that part of us, if it's not become a part of who we are, in other words, we're doing it without thinking, then it always takes us exercise and willpower. And it's not that somebody's weak or anything. Guess what? Willpower is limited. I don't care who you are. You know, you look at a guy like David Goggins, pretty disciplined guy, but I'll tell you what, there's only so much he's got.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He may not show it, but I promise you, he struggles with some stuff. There's things he'd like to be doing that he's not doing too. I can guarantee that.
Amen, dude. I that is so profound, and I'm so glad you said that about willpower, because willpower and discipline, you know, similar wavelength, but definitely not the same thing. Yeah. You know, willpower only lasts so long.
Sure.
And yeah, man, and before we fall apart, but yeah, discipline. Yeah. It's that's powerful. So what are some of the tools, the reprogramming tools that we can use to maybe become more disciplined or bring us into that better state?
Yeah, and we do require, to be super clear too, like, as I say, listen, willpower it takes discipline to get started.
Sure.
Right? Like you want to start something, maybe it is a new exercise program, it's going to take some discipline. So, but then there's the tools, as you're talking about, well, it takes discipline to begin to execute on the tools. To me, the biggest tools, the most important tools, 3 that I'll talk about, that if we will use them, they've been used for thousands and thousands of years, they'll be continued to use for thousands of years after us. Most of the time, they cost almost nothing, and yet very few people use them to change their life. And you're probably quite familiar with them. But my 3 favorite tools, hands down. Number 1, we talk about visualization. We have to understand that our mind thinks in pictures. So again, we want to communicate with the part of us. I have a friend, and he's a speaker. I should actually introduce to him. He's a great guy you should connect with, Vince Pacente, and former Olympian. And he wrote this book years ago called The Ant and the Elephant. And it's a little parable about the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. And of course, the conscious mind being the ant and the elephant being the subconscious. And it's a great analogy, right?
I love that.
It's a great little cute story too. But anyways, where I'm going with this stuff is that the language of the subconscious mind, the language of the elephant, if you will, is pictures and emotions. So we want to learn to communicate to it. All of us are visualizing at times. Most people use it in reverse. They use their imagination reverse, and they visualize not constructively, but instead destructively. How does that show up? We start to worry. We start to anticipate worst case scenario outcomes, picturing, imagining, visualizing, whatever term you want to use. You know, we start to stress about things. We start to replay the day over and over, the thing that went wrong, and it's all mental imagery. And the mind follows whatever pictures you're giving it. So if I'm constantly thinking about, if I'm on the golf course, right? The guy's up at the tee box and there's water off to the left. Don't hit the water. All he's thinking about is the water. The ball's going straight in the freaking water.
Oh, yeah.
Because the body follows the mind.
I can confirm, absolutely. Right?
So the body follows the mind. So we want to instruct the mind through mental imagery. This is one of the primary ways that it learns. So visualization, to use it in a framework, I mean, really simply, you could start 5 minutes a day. It doesn't take a lot, right? You could do it right before bed as you're drifting off. But to actually imagine your desired future, to imagine the desired outcome, several things are happening. Number one, right, we're communicating in a way that the mind understands, right? So that's imagery. So as I repeatedly do this, I'm building new neural circuitry entirely. And we all know, because we've all experienced dreams. I had a crazy dream last night. And when you have a crazy dream, you wake up and it's like, oh, man, that felt real.
Right.
You were dreaming, but it felt, as far as the body was concerned, it was real.
Yeah.
So even within your brain, when you begin to visualize a new outcome, a possibility for yourself, a desired future, a vision, a goal, whatever it is, you actually begin to create the neural circuitry as if it's already happening. Now, as we get better and we begin to not only perhaps see it, but maybe we start to sense some of it. Maybe you start to hear some of the things that are going on. Maybe you start to feel some of the temperature, that kind of stuff. And we start to, enhance that visualization. It becomes even more sensory and more neural circuitry is created. Why is that important? Mm-hmm. Well, your mind runs your life, right? 95% of who you are. So your mind runs your life. And it's going to choose the more dominant pattern. It's going to choose the more dominant, a process in your brain. So if I have one that says, one guy says, man, whenever I get scared, I just curl up in a ball. Well, that's a certain pattern that happens. And he has enough repetitions. She has enough repetitions of seeing that, living it, feeling it, belief. This has become who I am. But if I began to spend a little bit of time of seeing myself in a situation, let's use public speaking, acting in spite of fear. It's there, but I go up and do it anyways. I didn't actually do the public speaking gig yet, but as far as my mind's concerned, for the one time, I did. And as I begin to do enough repetitions of it, and if I keep feeding the new one, it's like I'm walking through the forest. I've got this old pathway that's so clear. It'd be so easy to go down the old path, but it doesn't take me where I want to go. I'm going to the cliff of despair. I'm going to the cliff of where I've been the last 20 years. But then I can kind of see vaguely off in the distance through the trees. Here's this beautiful lush field. It's full of fruit. It's full of everything I've ever wanted. But man, it's hard to get to. Well, guess what? You walk through it the first time, pretty tough to get. The second time, though, you might have broken down a couple branches. It's a little bit easier. The third time, and we start to use some of these tools. Now we bring the chainsaw. We'll talk about it a bit. And over time, we've got a new pathway, and the new pathway becomes easier to walk. This is how our brain works. When we keep firing these over and over, it becomes easier for us to move down the new path. And just like the forest, if I stopped walking down it or I walked on it less, what happens in the forest, it begins to overgrow. And the old path that was so easy before, over time is going to become harder and harder to walk down. And that's kind of like that. So visualization, I'm big on, right?
I like that a lot. And I know I apologize for interrupting because that's so powerful. There's so much to unpack there. The visualization piece is so big. And I want to get into that chainsaw piece in a second too.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so the practice of doing just 5 minutes a day and just building on that.
Yeah.
How does that work kind of when you're in the midst of it? You got everything firing at you at once. Your bank account's not where you need to be.
Yeah.
And it's hard to ignore those very powerful real images. It is. But how do you shift that from reality into visualize this is what I'm doing? Yeah.
One of the things that's helped me the most in my life, and a great mentor of mine, he passed away a few years ago, but one of my all-time mentors was Bob Proctor. And he taught a lot of great concepts. One of the concepts that changed my world, and it took me a long time, even though I had listened to Bob for, I don't know, on and off probably 5-8 years before that, but it wasn't until 2017 till I actually got it. And it's this concept of studying. So when we think of, probably what I just shared is that people are agreeing, that makes sense. Yeah. That does make a lot of sense. But it doesn't make sense to what we've been taught up to this point. We don't go to school and they teach you, listen, if you want to become a great performer in whatever you do, sports, business, whatever it is, we're going to practice rehearsing. We're going to do some mental, there was no class on it. I didn't attend that class.
No, there wasn't there.
I didn't take a class on my mind, right?
Right.
How my belief systems were formed. So in a way, it's counter to how we've been programmed. So as much as the idea makes sense, yes, we have to begin to continually study these kind of concepts to reinforce them. If you want to reinforce anything, repetition is the answer. So that's why I'm so huge on listening to podcasts like yours. I think like, going to events, going to seminars, reading books, courses. I mean, everybody I know that's leading a really big life, they're into this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They're working on themselves. And a lot of the time, we could go through several of the books. I got a hold of a bookshelf here. We would find a lot of similarities in a lot of them, right? I mean, principles are principles for a reason.
Yeah.
But when we continually repeat and study this stuff, we begin to believe in it a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So that's number one. Number two, which happens to be the chainsaw too, though, because it's a great point. You got in a fight with your spouse and it's time to visualize. Well, I mean, just check the bank account just bounced, whatever. You get the bill, you get the idea. I mean, all these things are staring at us. Our senses would tell us that I am not wealthy, right? So let's say you want to become, the senses would tell us that.
Right.
What I'm about to say, I'm just going to preface, in no way am I suggesting that this is easy. What I am suggesting is it is the way. That we have to practice. We have to practice ignoring our current results, ignoring our current reality. Not to the sense of, you're not going to do anything about it, but when we want to, if we keep, Adam, this is the greatest self-sabotage cycle that exists, the greatest loop, in my opinion, is that we look at the results that I have in my life that I don't like. You name it. Bank account balance, we look in the mirror, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then we think about that situation. So we begin to have thoughts about, oh man, I'm broke. I don't have enough money, this, that. How are we going to afford this, all this? Well, what did those begin to do? Those thoughts begin to create some pictures in your mind. They begin to trigger emotions. Now you become emotionally involved in the results that you don't want. Frustrated, upset, depressed, angry, guilty, shame, you name it. We got this whole host of emotions that we could experience of it. And the language, again, of the subconscious is both imagery and emotion. The subconscious runs your life, majority of your life. So you're speaking its language of thinking thoughts of brokenness and then feeling frustrated, etc. You're giving it instructions to continue to repeat the cycle.
And is that a safety mechanism for us? Are we protecting ourselves by focusing on the negative with that negative bias?
It's great. I mean, evolutionary, what's the brain designed for? Safety and survival. Right? We're much more than just a human being. We're spiritual beings in this human body. From the human experience, so what's the brain designed? Safety and survival. It's not designed for thriving.
Right.
It's designed to protect. So, back in the day, you got to watch out for the saber tooth. Well, you better be on alert all the time. You better be looking for problems. What could go wrong? Well, today, we're not worried about the saber tooth. But guess what? Now all of a sudden, the text message you get from your ex, all of a sudden, that's a threat to your safety.
Right.
You got the meeting coming up with the boss. That's a threat to the safety. The bank account, oh my God, that's a threat to the safety. So yeah, for sure. It's like hardwired in it. So again, I'm not saying it's easy. Yeah. But I am saying it works, right? It does work.
And it sounds like it's a practice. It's a discipline.
Yeah.
I mean, we just have to keep doing it. So
totally.
Going back to your points earlier about trying to put aside our ideal to be perfect, which we're never going to be. It sounds like, we practice these two things, visualization every day. We try to replace the thoughts where we practice ignoring the current reality, which is kind of what you said.
Yeah.
And we accept that we're not perfect, right?
Yeah. It's okay. I mean, one of the great things, accept is a great word. Yeah. Accept is a great word. I'm reading a book years ago, changed my life. Probably 2010, somewhere around there. It's called, it's on my shelf too. It's one of my all-time favorites. Have you ever heard of Robert Anthony, Dr. Robert Anthony?
I have not, no.
This guy, he's like a secret in the personal growth space, and he's just full of wisdom. He wrote a book back in the 80s. The title changed, but it became what's called Beyond Positive Thinking. And on the note of acceptance, there's one section in the book, because I was not this way before this.
Right.
But he's got, I remember where it was. I'm sitting there, lived at my buddy's house, and I'm reading it. I was, oh my, wow. One of those moments. And it goes like this. If you had a friend that talked to yourself the way that you did, that broke promises, that did X, X, and X, would you keep that friend in your life? Not that, what? No.
Right.
No. There's no way I would. And in that moment, again, Perfection is not what we're after, but progress certainly is. But in that moment, I made a decision that I was going to be way more accepting of it. And I made so many mistakes after that day, still do all the time. And I've developed a pretty good level, and I try and teach people this, and I want to help them with it, is to have some compassion for self, to have you're human.
Yeah.
But without that, man, we can stay stuck in that cycle a lot because you beat yourself up all the time. You're beating yourself up. Well, guess what? Giving the mind instructions, what to do, what to follow.
Yeah. I mean, just that awareness too is so valuable. And I hope the listeners kind of take that into perspective, because the awareness of knowing that you're self-sabotaging, that you're giving into this preconditioned programming just by having those negative thoughts. If you have that awareness and you maybe have some kind of level of like, oh, okay, that's doing this. I mean, that's a big deal too, just to have that awareness.
Totally it is.
Yeah. And hopefully, I mean, I've had guests too that have shared like, the idea of just having that mindfulness to attach that is just, okay, you have that awareness. Now get curious about it. Have that curiosity and ask, is that true? I've heard that question come up so much repeatedly within these shows. It's just is that really true? Yep. And then replace it with that visualization. I think that could be very powerful.
It's great, dude. It's so good.
Yeah. And so your shift, so you worked in the insurance world, you began to thrive in it. It seems like, right? So you kind of went through this practice, you went to this seminar, you met your future wife, now you have a community of support. Are you and you built your business, and everything lived happily ever after and nothing ever went wrong again? Is that how it went? Right?
That's what it was. Yeah, that's my life story. The golden ticket, just
that's right.
I mean, life is full. So I'm big on this concept. Everything's energy, right? I mean, science has been teaching that for a long time. Spirituality has been teaching it even longer than that. However, but everything's energy, and so this is a philosophy I have. We just want life to just like go perfectly and all. It doesn't work that way, and this is why I think it is. If you think about energy, so energy operates in two forms, wave and particle. But when energy is in a wave form, it vacillates. It goes up and down, right? As we measure it, right? So I mean, you can imagine like if they're measuring that, like an ECG or something, you're going to see the up and downness. This is part of the fabric of life.
Yeah.
Up and down. Well, you're energy too. You're an energetic being. So, I mean, obviously your life's going to have ups and downs. Now, the great news is, we could use another analogy. I've been in the investment world for a long time. The stock market has lots of ups and downs, but what does it always do? Always up. And I think life's like that too. Sometimes you get a big market crash, something happens, divorce happens, illness, death in the family. It sucks, and you're going to be okay. You're going to recover. You're going to get through it. And guess what? You're going to go to higher heights than you've been before. So I mean, no, it wasn't perfect. I got shit that happens all the time,
Right. Yeah.
But we do become better equipped to manage it as well. I think we become better at managing our emotions. Not perfect, but we certainly become better at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that analogy of the waveform. I've never heard it that way. And I think that's really profound, that the energy exists like waves, and I think that can be reassuring to anybody, that there are going to be ups and downs, but there's always hope beyond what feels hopeless.
Absolutely,
always. And so you've started to build a coaching career, a speaking career. Yeah. You have a great podcast that is a top 1% called The Pursuit. Yeah. What kind of led you down that path? So you've been running this successful insurance business. Now you've kind of gotten into that, just a desire to teach people, new passion. What was the? No,
not a new passion. I know you're in a similar world, so I imagine, maybe I'm wrong, but is it like a calling for you? Does it feel like something that I'm meant to go and do? Is that for you?
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what it was for me. But I will tell you, I love the name of your show, Flow Over Fear. I lived in fear of that for a long time. The calling was there, but I ignored it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had in the world that I was in, and still am, but in that insurance world, it was a big organization, had done well in it, a lot of speaking opportunities at different conventions, conferences, stuff like that, internally in our own team and everything too. So I had partially gifted, and a lot of it developed too, but had developed and been gifted a pretty good ability to speak and communicate, and I loved it. And there was this part of me that knew one day, the combination, I loved that and thrived in it, and then fanatical about the things that we're talking about today. like
Yeah.
psycho obsessed with this stuff, just like, can't stop. I've been doing it 15, 16 years studying and learning, and I won't put it away. It just won't go away. So I knew, Adam, that I was going to do this one day. But I lived in later, I'm not successful enough yet. Who's going to want to listen to me?
Right. Yeah.
At the time, when I first had that thought, I'm probably already making multiple six figures, which I'm sure was, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would have listened, but no, not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's interesting that you're saying that, because I'm absolutely resonating with that. Even now, as I'll go through, because still working, running a business, and I know you're in the same boat. Like, but we have this, when things go wrong in the business, and I totally internalize it, take it personally, and say like, oh my gosh, I'm screwing up this business here. How can I ever expect to teach anybody else about rising above fear if I'm feeling fear,
right?
Or not feeling like I'm in the flow? What the heck is wrong with me? Always gets into that cycle. So you saying that, I resonate with it. Yeah.
It what got me into it was a couple things. My podcast started from encouragement. Encouragement goes a long way.
Sure.
I like to think of I'm a fairly encouraging guy, and my wife is way better at it than I am. She's one of the best I know. But encouragement came. I had a friend of mine, Lena, who in the same business, she reached out to me one time, and she goes, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing a podcast or a YouTube?" I was like, "Yeah, I have, but I think it's too much work. I don't think I'm going to do it. Too much of a distraction."
Yeah.
And and she goes, "Well, I think you'd be really good at it. I think a lot of people would listen. I know I would listen to it." And I respect her in her opinion. I say, "Yeah, maybe." And so anyways, I think she brought it up to me one more time. And so one day I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. So I ordered the Blue Yeti. I don't know if you know the Blue Yeti microphone.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I ordered the Blue Yeti. I still got it down here. I don't use it anymore, but I keep it down here. So I ordered the Blue Yeti. I was like, all right, order the Blue Yeti. Did nothing with it for months. And then I don't know what happened, man, but one day I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to record the first episode. So record the first episode, get the site, get all that, uploaded it, and did my very first one. So for me personally, I think that we all have different personalities, right? Some people are very organized, methodical, everything. And I've tried to do it. It's just for me, I'm more of a, like I told you earlier, shoot from the hip kind of guy. So the episode's out. I had no other episodes ready.
Yeah.
Well, now I got to get some episodes ready. So, that's how the podcast started, right?
So you created urgency for yourself, basically. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, please go. Yeah.
Yes. So the podcast started, and then, and for me, what it was when I started the podcast, I thought, I'll do this for a while. It'll be great. Start to build, beyond kind of a financial brand, but start to build more of a personal development brand, and that'll maybe open some doors down the road for speaking, everything. Mm-hmm. And then what changed was my 35th birthday. I just turned 37, but my 35th birthday, we rented a hotel. We're staying downtown, and the next morning, my wife's still sleeping, and I woke up and I'm reflecting and journaling as I often do. And I thought, what do I really want for my life? Like, I'm 35 now. Where'd I like to be by 40, 45, whatever? And I'm always doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And I knew this was, honestly, dude, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to have conversations like this more. I wanted to be on stages. I wanted to be doing seminars, primarily doing seminars. That was my dream. Mm-hmm. And so I'm writing all that stuff. I want to do it, but I still had no date. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm not going to start this, when am I going to start it?
Mm-hmm.
So is it an income level? Is it 40? Is it 45? Is it this? And then I thought, and this question changed my life. It's not the first time I thought it, but it resonated with me at the time. What if I died young?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I never did what I really wanted to do. I never took the chance, and that scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
So then the story, I wish it had a rosy ending, right? I did nothing for 6 months with it.
Yeah.
This epiphany moment, July 18th, 2021, epiphany moment. I did nothing with it. But 6 months later, I was planning my goals for the next year. And I said, I'm going to start speaking. And I'm big on law of attraction. But months later, I did nothing with speaking, but it's in my goals. I'm going to start speaking. Lady reaches out to me, an acquaintance. She goes, hey, we're putting on this virtual summit. I love what you teach. I'm just wondering, she knew me from the insurance business. Would you come speak at it? It's like, well, freak, that's awesome, And anyways, brother, fast forward about, 8-9 months later, I did my very first seminar. So it wasn't perfect, it wasn't magnificent, but it got started. And that's how it got going.
Well, if there's one common theme that's coming out of this too, it's just really, I know Tony Robbins says where your focus goes, energy flows, but more just like putting your attention in a place, putting it out into the universe, and then just kind of focusing on that where you want to be.
Totally.
Leads you into that direction.
Oh, yeah.
And that's powerful. Yeah.
It totally is. Yeah. The day I decided to coach, because I wanted to do seminars, I didn't want to coach. Right. But I thought, I probably should. Most of the guys I know in that space, they do coaching too. Right. And so I thought I'll probably do it, but it wasn't my goal. But the day I decided to do it, there's no exaggeration. So I'm big on manifestation, right? So I'm going to coach. Next day, lady reaches out to me on Instagram. At the time, didn't know her. She was following me. I didn't know she was following me. She had been listening to my podcast. And she goes, hey, I know, I think I'd already done my first seminar. She goes, I know you do the group stuff. I'm just curious. Do you do anything? You coach people one-on-one? Day before, I just decided this is what I'm going to do. I was like, well, yes, I do actually. Let's jump on a call, see what you're looking for. And so she ended up, we worked together for about 6 months. Anyways, man, it's funny how that stuff happens. It ceases to surprise me, or amaze me. Pardon me. I'm surprised, but I'm always surprised how it happens. But I'm like, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
Well, I mean, there's so much happening in our universe. I mean, and so much in our world. There's so much happening that if we just choose to focus on something, chances are it's happening somewhere, and we're going to be attracted to it.
Yeah.
Whether it be something negative, like, oh my gosh, this is, this terrible event's going to happen or whatever, you're going to see something like that, or you're going to be drawn into it. The law of attraction is very powerful.
Oh yeah.
I'd love to know, a few things, or one of the biggest things that you've learned from podcasting over the many episodes that you've already done. You've developed this 1% podcast. What have you learned from that experience?
I didn't know when I got into it, how valuable the connections I would make would be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just hadn't thought of it. I mean, even some of the people that, I thought, they might get to know me a little bit, but to actually start to build these kind of relationships all over the world with pretty amazing people. So, I mean, I learned that. The other thing I learned too, not that I didn't know it, but I learned it to another level, is that successful people love helping other people become successful. And I have had some incredible, support, connections, introductions from people that, if, like, full transparent, I thought, man, they're going to do that for me.
Yeah.
They're going to make that introduction. Like, I just met them, and so that's been massive. For sure. And the other thing I learned, reminded of anyways, was the power of asking. My first few guests, the guy Vince, I was telling you about, Vince Spangl, I didn't know him, but I read his book. I loved his book. I'd given many copies to many people, and, pretty successful guy. But I remember reaching out to him. I started my podcast, November 2020, I think it was. And so I'm maybe a month into it, and I was like, all right, I'm going to reach out. And I reached out to a few, but he was one of the guys I reached out to, and he got back to me right away. He said, I'd love to. Comes on the show. And so that shocked me, Yeah. Because really, in terms of his world, I was nobody.
Yeah.
Right? Not that he thought that of me. That's what I was thinking, though, right?
Right.
Who am I to him? And he said, yes. So, I mean, learning that about podcasting is that ask. I had lots of people that never got back to me, too, by the way.
Yeah.
But I mean, some of the guests that we've had on, it's amazing the power of an ask.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's so true. And I mean, I guess I'm guessing a lot of that practice with the rejection too gave you a little more courage to reach out on that front. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this podcast, I mean, it is a cheat code to like the most massive amount of coaching you can get. I mean, just the hour that we're spending together here is, incredible, just so much incredible value coming from you and learning a lot. I mean, I'm just like, it's this incredible process, and the connections, as you say, that is a powerful way of looking at it too. So that's awesome.
It is, man. It is. I gotta go back to something because I don't want to leave everybody hanging. We mentioned the chainsaw, but I never talked about the chainsaw.
Let's talk about the chainsaw.
I gotta bring the chainsaw in. So the chainsaw, really simply, when it comes to reprogramming tools, is meditation. Hands down, it's meditation. So you asked a great question about, look at the bank account. I'm going to go visualize, and sometimes it's easier than others. But meditation will help you in so many ways. There's so many scientifically proven benefits, health benefits of meditation. You could look them all up if you want to, but it lowers blood pressure. I mean, there's so many great things it does for our body, which is great. Joe Dispenza's work is stunning. The stuff that they've been able to prove through studies of how it's transformed people's bodies. That's not why, it's a reason I use it. But meditation for reprogramming is incredible. So our brain operates on brainwave frequencies, right? We've got beta, which is normal, everyday kind of waking state. What do you got? You got beta, alpha, theta, and delta. So the subconscious mind operates in 3 of the 4. The conscious mind operates in beta. So when we're in beta, I'm in that waking state. I'm kind of in that conscious brainwave frequency. But if I want to change the operating system of my mind, if I want to reprogram the unconscious, which is exactly what we want to do, because when we can do that, we will have transformational change in our life, in any area you want, okay? But we have to get into the operating system. Well, the only way to get into the operating system is you've got to get into those lower brainwave frequencies. So alpha is when we drop from a state of where, deep learning. Maybe you're enthralled in this book, right? And you forget about the rest of what we've dropped into alpha in that, right? We're at a live seminar. And again, you're not thinking about your work. You're just, boom, I'm there. I'm present. I've dropped, that's the door. That's the starting point to the subconscious. But theta brainwave frequency is primarily a subconscious state. Normally, you're only experiencing that when you're sleeping. Same with delta. Delta, you're only experiencing when you're sleeping. But theta, normally, you're only experiencing when you're sleeping. However, it's a purely subconscious state. Meditation, as you begin to practice more and more, allows you to lower the brainwave frequency. You can drop from beta to alpha, and with practice, you can get into theta.
Wow.
Now, when we meditate, I like guided meditations. And matter of fact, I've created several, but guided meditations that help people meditate, help you relax, right? We're going to slow down the body, all that stuff, activate, the parasympathetic nervous system there, where your body begins to slow down, right? You begin to tell the body it's safe, it's okay. So meditations allows us to do this. Now, after I've done this for a little bit, now I begin to visualize inside the meditation. Now I begin to imagine my future. Now I begin to imagine seeing myself being who I want to be, acting how I want to act, having the things I want to have, being with the people I want to be with, hearing the conversations. Well, what's happening is your closed eyes, right? So I'm blocking out sensory perception that way. Usually I've got headphones on, so I can't hear as much. I'm sitting still or laying down. I prefer sitting still. And so the body's not moving, it's not active, at least in terms of that way. And I'm blocking out a lot of these senses. I'm allowing myself to go within. And in doing this, I'm accessing that subconscious part of myself. I can begin a lot of the reprogramming. I also believe you can communicate with Source, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, in a much more effective way. And I can practice with focus. I can practice imagining my future and feeling my future. And in doing that, I'm making changes that are happening within me. If I do it enough times, my behavior will begin to change. And also, this is how I'm able to activate the law of attraction more by tuning into the frequencies of what I want. So that's like a real short 2-minute of it. We could spend a whole day on that stuff, but that's a quick version of the chainsaw, and it freaking works.
Well, I love that. And that's the first time I've ever heard chainsaw and meditation use the same sentence. And then second of all, what's great about that 2-minute primer though is that our audience doesn't necessarily have to remember all that, because you do have a mini course on that that they can take, which is awesome. Yeah. Because you're intriguing me, and I'm going to tap into that resource because it's something that I desperately need. Cool. So can you talk a little bit about the mini course that you have for that?
I'd love to. It's a 7-day, I call it the 7-day meditation challenge. And it's good for people if they've never meditated. It's good for people if they've done it before, but basically it's ultimately to help you build a little bit of consistency to get started in it. Right. So it's a 7-day, I give you it's a 10-minute meditation. It's the same one each day. It's a guided one. You're going to relax a little bit. You're going to imagine your future. You're going to see yourself having your day go the way you want to. So it's a guided visualization. So it's a simple way to do it. It's 10 minutes. Don't tell me you don't have 10 minutes. Everybody's got 10 minutes, right? And then alongside that, every day you'll get about I think most of them are maybe 2-3 minute video where I'm going to teach you some different things about it that'll help enhance your understanding of meditation. It changed my life. I've watched it change so many others. And when we do our seminars, we always incorporate various meditations throughout it. And in a one-on-one, I'll even create custom ones with people in the coaching we do. But I have to tell you, it's so powerful. So for anyone, if you even remotely like the idea of it, give it a try. Yeah. Right? Give it a try. Yeah.
I love that idea. Yeah.
We'll set it up for your listeners too. If you just go to, we'll go to benspangl.com/Adam. And then we'll make sure they get a free, it's a $97 course, but we'll give them free. They can have it.
Oh, that's tremendously generous. I really appreciate that, Ben.
Yeah, you bet.
That's huge. So that's benspangl.com/Adam.
Yeah.
And yeah, go there right now, download that course, because that'll help you to create the power of visualization in your own life, and hopefully bring you out of that, maybe those negative behaviors that are drawing you so much into where you don't want to be.
100%. It'll help you.
Powerful.
Yeah, it'll help you. Yeah.
I love that. Well, Ben. This has been amazing, and I know we could go on for hours on these subjects, and we've just scratched the surface. And I hope to have you back one day, because
that'd be great, man.
There's so much gold in this, and grateful to you for being here today. If you're listening to this and you want to get in touch with Ben, or download the meditation mini course, go to benspangl.com/Adam. And Ben, where else can people find you if you want them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, right on the website, benspangl.com. Spangl is, there's no E, so it's SPANGL. But benspangl.com. And then I'm on most of the social platforms, but where you'll find me most active is Instagram, at Ben Spangl. I'm in Facebook too, to a degree. I do have a LinkedIn, but it might take me a couple weeks before I get back to you. I'm not super active on it. So Instagram's the best.
Awesome. Well, Ben, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all that you're doing here. And yeah, if you enjoyed this episode and you're listening to it, thank you for listening. Please share it with a friend. Please subscribe and rate it. And go after you do that, go to look up The Pursuit, the podcast, The Pursuit. That's Ben Spangl's podcast. And enjoy that show as well. And until next time, thank you all for being here. We'll see you again soon. Thanks,
Adam.
Hey, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you've been listening for a while, you know how important community and mentorship is to living a life of abundance above your fears. If you want to connect with me, hear about new offerings, episodes, and strategies to live with conviction, courage, and clarity, then sign up for my newsletter now. It's a way to stay connected to me outside of social media and bring a little empowerment to your inbox, and maybe a few dad jokes here and there. Sign up now at adamcliffordhill.com. Now back to the show. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.